Well, a big thank you, if I may, to you all for coming. It's very good of you to turn out on such a miserable day. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Nigel Waterson. I'm Chair of Trustees of ILC UK. Delighted you can be with us for the launch of our An Age of Opportunity plan for 2024 and beyond. I'd like to begin by thanking my fellow trustees for all their hard work. We've had a very long meeting earlier on discussing the ILC's programme. Particularly like to congratulate my fellow trustee Glyn on this being his birthday. But I would like to thank all my fellow trustees for their dedication in their essential role in making this all happen. Many of you will already be familiar with the ILC and what we do, both nationally and internationally, and I hope you're impressed by how a relatively small organisation can punch well above its weight and produce so much useful and interesting material. 25 years or so ago, my old friend Sally Greengross set up the ILC, and she had this vision of an organisation that would look at the future in the light of demographic change. People talk about climate change and all sorts of other factors, AI, etc., but often demographic change is slightly lost sight of when it comes to policy making. Sally wanted us to work as part of a global movement, which is what we are, and focus on the longevity of all ages, the life course, not just older people. And we're still determined to deliver and build on that vision, and our new strategy will help us to do that. Governments and businesses increasingly recognise the importance of longevity in the decisions they make. They understand that an ageing population is having an economic as well as a social impact. And they also, of course, understand the spending power and the political influence of older consumers. We know older people are more likely to vote than younger people. So as a society, we are still failing to grasp the opportunity of longer lives. And what we want is a world where we all live happier, healthier, and more fulfilling, longer lives, and where future generations are better off. We want to forge a new vision for the 100-year life, where we all have the opportunity to learn across our lives and where new technology helps us to contribute more to society. And we want to place longevity at the heart of government and business planning, thinking and policy making. Fortunately, there's a general election just around the corner, some of you may have heard, sometime in the next year. A great opportunity for us to get our thinking, our ideas across to each of the major parties as they work on their manifestos for that election. And our longevity white paper, which will be out shortly, will help us and them to do just that. But to deliver this vision, we do need your help. So please, if you're not already working with us, do get in touch and see how we can work together. So I'm now going to turn to my colleague Aaron, who's Senior Health Research Lead, who will be sharing some of what the ILC have achieved so far. Thank you very much.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm just going to spend a few moments to talk to you a little bit about what we've achieved, but it's so great to see so many friendly faces in the audience today and really friends of ILC, and I hope I get the chance to speak to all of you at some point during this evening. So for those of you who don't know, although I'm sure most of you do, the ILC, we are the leading authority on the impact of longevity on society. And what we really do and what we're about is about taking evidence, taking solutions, and convening people together to identify what happens next, what we need to do to make change happen. That's what we're about. And what I can say is that over the last decade, we've achieved a lot, and we've had quite considerable reach, not just in the UK, but also globally. We've engaged with people across all strands of longevity and across all sectors, from the charity sector to business to academics, you name it. We have spoken to people who are really keen to understand what needs to happen to really future-proof our population as it goes through significant demographic change. We've engaged with not just lots of people, I should emphasize. We've actually engaged with the right people, getting in front of decision makers that we need to really persuade and work with to really think about the future and to achieve really the impact that we want to achieve. We've engaged with ministers to really think about and encourage them to think about long-termism in policy thinking. And we've also helped to set up the UK's government's first older people's housing task force. This is just one of the examples of the work that we have done. So we know that the challenge that we're dealing with when it comes to longevity, it's changing, it's shifting, it's not static. And so the work that we do is to really understand what it is that different groups of people are facing across our demographic. Working with LGBT groups, for instance, working with other marginalized groups to really understand how their experience of aging and getting older is different to that of the majority population, and to really understand what it is that we need to be doing. We're also sought after for the work that we do. By the government as well, to help inform their own thinking. So it's not just about us going to the people that we need to influence. It's about them also coming to us and that they recognize that we are a leading player in the space of longevity. One of the pieces of work that we've recently published is our Healthy Aging and Prevention Index, and it's really a great resource. It's a really innovative way for us to share the research that we do with policymakers, and we've had amazing success in getting it to people across the globe. Since we've launched it, over 5,000 people have viewed and used the index and across 50 different countries. We've also been in front of health ministers who've endorsed the index. We've engaged on global policy forums where we've really been able to identify what it is that governments need to do to invest in healthy aging. So there's lots and lots, and I would be happy to speak to you more about this project work and what we plan to do in the future as well, because this is just a starting point. We've just launched it, but we plan to do a lot more in the future years to come. So I just wanted to sort of finally conclude with just saying that I think we know that we need to be doing more. We know that not enough has changed. We want to really forge on a new vision for the 100-year life. And I think, now is a better time than any other to really start the work that we think is really important. So thank you very much. And I hope to get the chance to speak to all of you at some point this evening.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron. That was a great canter through what we've been up to. It's now my great pleasure to invite our Chief Executive, David Sinclair, to tell us about our vision for the next 5 years. David.
Great, thank you. And can I add my thanks to Nigel and our trustees? This week is Trustees Week, and trustees across the UK. I think there's 1 million trustees who do work for free, frankly, running organisations, and we wouldn't be here without them. So thank you, Nigel, and thank you to our trustees. And thank you to Aaron as well, who stepped in literally the last minute to help us with that presentation. So thank you. Thanks, Aaron. I suppose, we've had this is what we've done so far, and you'll have seen the impact report. I'm going to do the slightly more glass half empty, miserable, it's all really bad. And why we accept we need to change a bit. So, and I'm drawing on some new research we've done as part of our longevity white paper that we'll be launching at the Future of Aging. So whilst we can pat ourselves on the back, and I think claim significant credit in terms of convening, in terms of influencing, actually, big picture-wise, we've got a lot to do. It is now the case that just £4 of every £100 wealth in the UK is held by people aged under 40. This is halved in a decade. So we have a generation of younger people who are holding tiny amounts of wealth as our population ages. And yet, whilst older people are actually sitting on fairly significant amounts of wealth over their last decade, there has just been a 3.5% increase in spending by older people, despite the fact there's 1.7 million more people. So we're struggling to get people who are older to spend the resources that they have, and actually, without being judgmental, not necessarily always on the right thing. So whilst younger people are reducing consumption of alcohol and cigarettes, and younger generations are, older people are not, and there's a fairly significant increase. we aren't building for longevity. Government has a commitment for a bit of building 300,000 new homes. A target has not met, any government has met since 1977, which is a very long time ago. 11% of the 1 million property purchases involve buyers age over 65, yet that's 38% of householders. We're not moving enough as we get older, and actually we have 40% of those aged 75 living alone, potentially in houses which are far too big for us. So our housing isn't working for us. And at the same time, actually, we're lonelier. 500,000 more people are experiencing chronic loneliness since before the pandemic. So actually, we're in a really, whilst we can claim some success, I think there's a need for some fairly significant change, and we need and want to work with you on this. It's a global challenge, and we know, and some of you are here are global partners. Japan's ageing population poses an urgent risk to society, from the Japanese Prime Minister fairly recently. And of course, Japan is in a place where it has 250% debt to GDP, a very significant economic and social challenges that come with ageing, but it is not a uniquely UK problem. And for ILC as an international organisation, it's really important for us to recognise that. So we found ourselves in this policy Groundhog Day, and my eyes are going to struggle with this, my post-COVID eyes. But we've been talking about social care white papers for 20 years. We've been talking about we need a case study that isn't B&Q. B&Q's initiative around older workers is now 30 to 40 years old. It was the 1990s. Ford Focus was in the 1990s, and inclusive design. We've got Paul here, who was at ex-Saga. Saga's first holiday was first took people to Hong Kong in the 1950s. Some of these things we're talking about are not new. We've been talking about bed blockers. We've been talking about we've been blaming young marketing people who don't get older people. So we've really struggled with making the sort of policy and social progress that we need. So that's the sort of my glass half empty. What does that mean in terms of where we go and what we do? And I'm not going to read these because actually I will immediately lose you. But I suppose we're going through an evolution as opposed to revolution, and building on the strengths we have. So, for example, our focus being on evidence, solutions and networks. That's building on our very, very strong convening power we already have. Our purpose, I think we want to be a lot clearer in relation to who our audience is. Our audience isn't the member of public, it's not older people, we're not an older person's organisation. We're explicitly interested in engaging with government, policymakers, businesses and employers. So actually it's not for us to be doing mass public campaigns, and I think that's one area where we can distinguish ourselves from others. And then Sally's vision of ILC was very much about future and future generations. So we very much see ourselves as being part of a movement around thinking about the future of, as Nigel said, of longevity and demographic change, and the future of society in the light of those issues. What does that mean in practice? It means that we will change the way we work. We want to be focused a lot more on solutions. We know what the problems are. We've known what they've been for a long time. We want to be more collaborative. We want to be more Marmite and less vanilla. And what we mean by that is we want to be a bit more challenging of all of us in the room and around. We want to make sure that we are engaging the right people, as I said. And in terms of then what that means we talk about, it means, and again, this is evolution, not revolution, we talk about prevention. We've been doing that for a long time. We talk about demography and not old age. We talk about intergenerational inequalities, not generational war. Honest about longevity, not positive aging, always raises a few eyebrows. But what we really mean by this is that actually aging isn't positive for everyone, and it isn't helpful necessarily for us always to pretend that aging is great, and we aren't going to inspire public policy and ministers to change things if their impression of all 80-year-olds is they're jumping out, doing marathons and jumping out of aeroplanes. And so I think we need to accept that aging is pretty bad for lots of people. We want to be about long-term, not short, future, not today, and international. We need to build on the international skills and relationships we have. In terms of then the how, and my colleague as well is going to talk in a couple of moments about the ILC agenda, but we will be launching our white paper on longevity at Future of Aging. We have we plan to be a lot clearer on what it is we think needs to change and what our role is in relation to that. We want to build a movement, we want to use part of that movement, and we want to use that convening power we have. We want to be a lot better at communicating who we are. It's very difficult. The number of times in a day I have to tell people often that we're not an older person's organisation is very striking, and we're 25 years old. So there is a real challenge for us around how we get our brand out there clearer. And partly the way, and we've got Iona James here and Emily, who've both done some amazing work with the media with us over the last few months. We want to be in the right media. We had a letter in The Economist just a couple of weeks ago, a letter in The Times a few weeks before that. We want to be going where the politicians go to, not necessarily worrying as much about that quote at the bottom of an article. We want to be really, really focused on the right people. We are planning to publish an annual impact statement, and the first one is available outside, and Aaron talked a little bit about that. And we want to be looking a lot more, if we're moving away from problems, looking at how we develop the solutions, how we challenge groupthink, how we use our experts, and some of you are here, our insight experts and strategic advisory boards to deliver that. So that's the plan. Please, again, as Nigel and Aaron have said, please come and talk to us, and I will pass back to Nigel.
Well, thank you very much, David, for that presentation. I'm now going to invite Isabel Gillespie, our Head of Programmes, to talk a bit about our agenda and how you can work with us.
Thanks, Nigel. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. As you said, I'm Isabel, ILC Head of Programmes. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about our new agenda. So we've got ILC plans to develop and deliver a clear set of solution-focused policy programs over the next couple of years. We've separated these into 4 themes. So this is highlighting the impact of longevity on society, our healthcare, looking at financial, and most importantly, our communities. So where do we see the opportunities sitting under these agenda items? So first and foremost is future trends and demographic trends. This is kind of ILC bread and butter. We know what the 100-year life looks like now. We want to see what the 100-year life looks like in the future. And we also want to investigate how specific parts of the population will be living their additional years and how we can address the inequalities there. Our second theme is health. So the first one there is prevention. I'm sure a lot of you, it probably sounds like a bit of a broken record, but despite knowing that prevention is better than cure, there's still not enough happening with our decision makers, and they're failing to adapt. So Aaron mentioned before our prevention index. We want to be building on this. We want to be looking at how we can be making the case more for investing in preventative health and identifying solutions for behavioural and administrative change. We want to be looking at technology, so that includes big data, it includes artificial intelligence. We want to be looking at the way that that's going to affect the way in which we deliver preventative and acute healthcare. It's obviously going to improve our health span, but we also want to be looking at maybe where an over-reliance on technology could pose unanticipated outcomes. A good example of this might be virtual companions for older people. Would loneliness rise or fall with something like that if we were to adopt that more broadly? And climate change. So undoubtedly 2 of the biggest issues facing society at the moment are climate change and longevity. So we want to use our network to highlight the links between the 2 agendas and see how potentially moving the needle in one of these could move the needle in the other. The next set of opportunities under our themes in our agenda are financial. So you know what I'm saying. So we know that poor young people become poor older people. We also know that almost every developed nation faces a huge intergenerational savings gap. So we want to look at what the knock-on effects are here. We've also as ILC, as an organisation, we have a strong legacy of work in the financial space, and we want to build on that. So we want to use our expertise to explore finances across the whole life course, looking at accumulation, decumulation, planning, how technology and AI is going to affect this consumption and the changing economic landscape that we find ourselves in now. How is this going to affect the way that people save, invest, spend? And then we all know we're living longer. So we're going to have to be required to pivot, upskill, relearn, to remain in the workforce and remain financially secure. So we want to determine which are the best ways to implement all forms of learning right across the life course, not just at the latter end of your life, but also at the start of people's lives. And the last theme is our communities. So with relationships, we know we're living longer lives, of course. There's also technological advancements, there's cultural shifts, and our demographic changes are reshaping the ways that we connect. We want to be using our expertise to be looking at what scenarios are going to happen to us in the future, and do those have positive implications or unexpected consequences with the ways that we communicate and the way that we interact with one another. The 15-minute place, we want to use our expertise again to collaborate across governments, designers, developers, planners, businesses, industries, to identify innovative ways to transform our high streets, our communities, and our overall quality of life. The last one here is a very important one, housing. ILC's done a lot of work in this space previously. We want to build on that knowledge again and fix this conundrum that we have, which is an overall shortage, sky-high prices, generations of people that don't own their own home, and older people living in under-occupied housing. So finally, how can we work with you to take advantage of these opportunities? Like David has touched on, Nigel's touched on, Aaron's touched on. We've worked with businesses, non-for-profits, charities. We've got expertise and connections to help vast portions of society understand what longevity means for them and their sector. We're good at research. We know how to get the right people in the right room, and we look forward to connecting with you all tonight. ILC staff are all wearing our little red lanyards, as are our trustees. So we look forward to meeting you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Isabel. That's it from us. Please do stay as long as you like. Interact with staff, with trustees, and with each other. Thank you for coming.